and they require absolute physical effort to lift the switch up, raise it over a gate and back down. So it had to be done by one of the pilots. But since the co-pilot was the one flying, then of course the captain was the one under suspicion.
On 14 July, India's aviation regulator DGCA instructed all Indian carriers with Boeing 737 and 787 aircraft to check the fuel switch locking mechanism. Air India completed precautionary inspections across all its Boeing 787s and found no issues.
And what is very obvious to us pilots is 3 seconds after liftoff is the perfect time to have done this.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear thoughts build up until I can't feel. My mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear.
Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science. Before we deal with the pilots, and this is another fascinating background sketch that really fleshes out not only the type of person the captain was, but his co-pilot as well. Before we deal with that, I want to show you guys these cutoff switches up close. It's clear that you have to pull them towards you before you can move them, sort of lift them over a little ridge of metal. And this is a safety feature that makes it very difficult to move them accidentally, because an accidental graze or brushing against it would tend to be from the top down. A channel on X called Aircraft Maintenance Engineers also compiled a handy animation of the switches being transitioned. Now, one thing we haven't dealt with in terms of the two pilots is the dynamic that was likely taking place between them. Think about it. The one pilot is 32 years old at the beginning of his career, cool, energetic, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, while the 56-year-old captain is coming to the end of his career and sort of being ushered through the back door. I mean, his final chapters at the company weren't exactly a triumph if he was taking medical leave, and couldn't have been much fun within the context of losing his mother. Of course, no such dilemmas with a younger pilot. I made an offhand remark fairly early on in my analysis where I asked an open question. Basically, how did the captain feel about retirement? Not how did you feel about his retirement, but how did he feel? Not just retirement, but giving up an exciting, glamorous, prestigious lifestyle in order to look after his elderly father. Now, you might think it's a tremendous honor, but the question again is, what did he think? How did he feel about it? How did he feel about ending 37 years at a particular job? Well, an important part of that ending was, I think, working with the much younger pilot who would essentially take his place. What was that younger pilot's personality like? What was the captain's personality like? Did they rub each other the wrong way? I do think there is maybe something wrong with you if an older person doesn't feel a little insecure in a situation like that, perhaps even a little unhappy. Perhaps life felt more than a little unfair. It's hard not to wonder if the older pilot didn't have feelings of jealousy, envy, and resentment. After all, if it was deliberate, the one person the captain knew he was taking down with him was his co-pilot, was the person sitting next to him, was this younger person talking to him. And so the question is, how did he really feel about that? Now, when his co-pilot asked, why did you turn the switches off, he did so while panicking. I know I would be panicking, wouldn't you? And yet the captain remained calm. Did he remain calm because he was just that kind of guy, a cool cucumber, or was crashing the plane all part of the plan? If it was all part of the plan, you can imagine he would remain calm.
Nobody panics. Because it's all part of the plan.
In the next section, we're going to do two things. Firstly, we're going to dig a little deeper into the ordinary psychology of both pilots. As we do so, we're going to try to imagine what their interactions, what their dynamic likely was, both in the cockpit and out of it. Were they friends? Did they hang out together? Did they have much in common besides flying? What did the older, more experienced pilot think of the younger, less experienced pilot who was essentially replacing him? Have any of you watched the movie F1? I think the movie F1, which pits two Formula One drivers of different temperaments against each other, it's a very good film, by the way. It provides some very interesting insight into that older, younger dynamic. Secondly, after dealing with the temperaments and habits of both pilots, I want to share a clip from the movie Wild Tales. Someone suggested in the comments, thanks very much for that, by the way, that it really brings home the real terror of being trapped inside a plane where passengers are really at the mercy of a pilot and their whims, whatever he or she is going through. But first things first. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. If you're finding this analysis worthwhile, please do hit the thanks button and let's get started. Right, so let's deal with A, the co-pilot. We want to know more about Clive Kunder, the co-pilot, and we find this out from the Wall Street Journal. The 32-year-old First Officer Kunder had also dreamed of flying as a child, inspired by his mother's 3-decade career as an Air India flight attendant. His mother recalled his childhood travels with her to Singapore, Bangkok, and Dubai. Now, this is why I describe Kunder as bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. Remember, the younger pilot is partially inspired by his glamorous mom, who has plenty of adventures as an air stewardess and perhaps has taken him along on some of them as a little boy, and he wants to have some of those adventures now as well. And who can blame him? Back to the Wall Street Journal, his sister Camille Kunder said that when they played make-believe as children, Kunder always pretended to be a pilot. He just loved everything about flying, she said. Well, if he brought that exuberance into the cockpit, how did his colleague react to it? With equal enthusiasm or something else? And that then brings us to B, the captain. According to the journal, he was a very reserved guy right from the beginning. You are already getting a sense he might be an introvert, the strong silent type, and that temperamentally the older man and the younger man are quite different. Sabharwal's serious demeanor, along with the way his eyes turned down at the corners, earned him the nickname Sad Sack. Well, that seems to say it all, doesn't it? If his nickname was Sad Sack, and he apparently had depression towards the end, then wasn't unhappiness of a sort a lifelong struggle for this guy? If it was, one can imagine a perky young pilot sometimes reminding him of his own love of flying, but as his tenure was drawing to a close, causing him pain, possibly, actually pissing him off, perhaps, certainly at times, for showing a lot of verve and spunk next to him in the cockpit. Back to the journal. Unlike other students' messy quarters, Sabharwal kept a Spartan room filled with a bare minimum. If you open his cupboard, there were 2 formal shirts, 2 t-shirts, 2 pairs of shoes, 1 slippers, and 1 bag. It also seems like Sabharwal is a textbook character, disciplined, regimented, but not necessarily walking with a spring in his step towards the end, whereas Kunder was in it for the love of it. But Sabharwal was too. Sabharwal was driven by a sheer love of flying and showed a flair for mentoring younger students. When Kohal was assigned to shadow Sabharwal on a flight, he explained flying concepts better than some instructors. If Sabharwal did maintain this love for flying to the end, perhaps the thought of never flying again was a source of tremendous dread, and unhappiness piled onto a mountain of sadness. Perhaps the one thing that really made him happy was flying, and now he was going to lose that as well, forever. Remember, he didn't have a wife to go home to retire to, or children, as far as we know. He was a middle-class boy looking at the sky and saying, I want to be there. But life was saying, it's over. Now let's close with a short clip from the movie Wild Tales.
Теперь дверь закрыта, а пилоты не отвечают, и я в отчаянии, я не знаю, что делать. Не хочешь исповедаться? А я изменила ему с другом.
You'll see that it sketches a scene, it dramatizes a scene where a mini-drama unfolds in the cabin, where a passenger, an attractive woman, distraught, admits to her fellow passengers that she slept with the pilot's one and only best friend, and evidently he's just found out.
С ним.
And it really does capture that sense of desperation. If you've got some crazy person behind the wheel, certainly in terms of one of these planes, what that's got to feel like for everyone else on board.
Габриэль, послушай меня! Ты ни в чем не виноват! Ты сам являешься жертвой во свою жизнь! Слишком много от тебя требовали и подарили тебе вот эти твои комплексы! Они виноваты во всех твоих бедах! Ты ни при чем! Габриэль, мы здесь совершенно ни при чем! Габриэль!